At the class reunion, someone asked the former top student, "Claire, we're all in our 30s now, and everyone who should be married is married, so why are you still single?" Claire Summers smiled faintly. "I'm still waiting for the person I gave my love letter to when I was 18 to write me back." As she spoke, she looked toward Ethan Carter, who was sitting beside me, and her eyes slowly turned red. Ethan froze and murmured, "I never received it." The truth from back then slowly began to unravel. It turned out Claire's letter had been delivered to the wrong place. It was that tiny mistake that kept them from being together. The room instantly erupted with teasing. "You and him were seriously the couple I shipped the hardest back then." I was so upset when Lily cut in later. "Lily totally took advantage of the situation, and you clearly knew Ethan first. A love letter just happened to be put in the wrong place? Don't you think someone switched it on purpose?" Everyone in the room turned to look at me. Amid the noise, I gently touched the man beside me and asked in a low voice, "Honey, they're saying I got between you two back then, so what do you think?" Ethan did not answer me and instead stared at Claire. His eyes were also a little red. The classmates were the ones who lost their composure first, crying out one after another, "Lily, you and Ethan are married?" Claire also jerked her head up and fixed her gaze on Ethan, disbelief flashing through her eyes. A few classmates laughed awkwardly again. "Why didn't you tell any of us? We've been classmates for so many years, and you two really kept us in the dark." "Yeah, unless Ethan didn't actually want to. When Claire went abroad back then, he was heartbroken for a long time, and I heard he almost tried to kill himself. Then wasn't it only natural for Ethan to choose Lily? Why are you speaking up for Lily? Everyone knows Claire's family was too poor back then, and Lily basically took advantage of her when she was down." I ignored all those comments and only looked at Ethan, wondering when he would explain things for me. He was the one who pursued me back then, and after we dated for 2 years, we had been married for 3. It was not like every first love who returned from overseas could pick up where things left off. Besides, Ethan and I could be considered childhood sweethearts too, and I was the one who asked him to come with me to this reunion today, or Claire would not even have had the chance to see Ethan. But Ethan, who sat beside me, remained silent, and I turned my face to look at him. Too many emotions churned in his eyes: surprise, heartache, and regret that had been buried for years, but had never faded. Yet he still did not explain. The atmosphere gradually cooled. I pressed my lips together, and put down my utensils too. Could it be that he really still could not let go? I had almost forgotten. Back in college, Ethan liked Claire so much that almost the entire school knew. She always wore washed-out shirts, and her lunch was always just a single slice of bread. Ethan found all kinds of ways to bring her meals, books, and contest prize money, and he even secretly stuffed his own allowance into her desk. But Claire never appreciated it. She returned the lunchbox to him untouched and looked at him coldly. "Keep your pity to yourself. You're no different from them." But Ethan still refused to give up. It was not until the end of freshman year that Claire was finally moved, and they slowly became friends. After that, during sophomore year, Claire suddenly disappeared. She left without saying goodbye and gave no explanation, leaving only one note. "I'm starting to hate you, so please forget me." Ethan chased her all the way to the airport, only to see the plane streak across the sky. He broke down crying on the spot, and when he went home, he fell into depression. It was true that I took advantage of him at his lowest point, pushed open the door he had shut himself behind, and pulled him back from the edge of the rooftop. "If she doesn't want you, I do, so what do you like about her? Her stubbornness? I can change myself to match." From that day on, I lived as another Claire Summers. I learned the way Claire spoke, grew my hair long like hers, and even wore the white dresses she liked. And my family's business barely survived with the Carter family's support. When the Carter family arranged a marriage alliance later, I had originally planned to step aside tactfully, but he grabbed me and held me tightly. That night, he cried and begged me to love him a little and not abandon him too. "I don't want to be abandoned again, so please marry me." I sighed and touched his face. "Ethan, we can still be friends. But I love you. What about Claire?" He tightened the arm around my waist even more and kissed me. "I hate her, and from now on, I only want Lily." After that night passed, the Carter family accepted me as their daughter-in-law. People in our circle all said behind my back that I was shameless and manipulative, that the Bennett family had nearly gone bankrupt, and that I had forced myself on Ethan to revive Bennett Group. They were all waiting. They were waiting for me to get divorced and become a joke. But over the past 5 years, Ethan and I had only grown better and more loving. Until I saw the way he looked at Claire at this moment. My heart suddenly tightened with pain. How ridiculous. Ethan Carter, never pick up trash. Ethan's words instantly froze the smile on Claire's face. Ethan's words made the private room fall completely silent. He took my hand and laced his fingers with mine. "Let me introduce her. This is my wife, Lily Bennett." If anyone uses those old stories to disgust her again, don't blame me for turning on you. I married Lily because I love her, and who hasn't met one or two toxic women when they were young? Don't open your mouths and throw dirt on my wife for no reason. His tone shifted, carrying blatant mockery. As for Miss Summers, did going abroad leave you with nothing but this? So, what if you started a company? Do you even have assets over 10 million? Do you even have 10 employees under you? Claire could no longer smile at all. But Ethan took my hand and softened his voice. Honey, I told you I didn't want to come, so what was the point of seeing these people? You're not wrong, I answered softly. Whoever you scold deserves it. The entire room fell into silence, and the class reunion was basically over. The classmates who had been gossiping earlier came over to apologize before leaving and wished us happiness. Claire sat in her seat with her head lowered and did not move. But when Ethan stepped out of the private room, he still turned his head back once. Regret and sorrow made that woman look much more haggard in just a few hours. I clearly felt Ethan's hand tighten around my waist. Then he turned his gaze forward, acted as if nothing had happened, and got into the car with me with a smile. But after we got home, I still felt a little uneasy when I thought about what had happened. I put down my bag, and my voice was hoarse. Ethan, if you want to get back together with Claire, we can get D. Before I could finish, he suddenly pushed me down onto the sofa, gripped the side of my neck, and leaned in. His fingers sealed my lips, then moved down along my collarbone, and paired with his cold, restrained face, my breath immediately caught. What nonsense are you talking about? He moved close to me, his breath warm. Can I carry you back to the bedroom? I want you. After he said that, he kissed me. We tangled all the way to the bedroom. For one moment, I almost forgot all the unpleasantness, and just as the corners of my lips lifted into a smile, Ethan's phone suddenly rang. I answered it instinctively. Soft breathing came from the other end of the line, and Claire's voice carried drunkenness and broken sobs. Ethan, couldn't you have waited for me a little longer? It's only been 5 years. You call me toxic, but you don't know it all. The only person I've ever loved is you. I was silent for a moment before speaking. Claire, it's 3 in the morning. My husband just fell asleep from exhaustion, so, do you need me to wake him up? The other side went instantly quiet, then the call was abruptly hung up. My expression turned serious for once, and I frowned tightly as I looked at the sleeping Ethan beside me. His lashes trembled lightly, and his lips pressed into a straight line, as if he was having a nightmare. I lay down, curled into his arms, stopped thinking about it, and closed my eyes wearily. But after sleeping for less than 2 hours, I woke up. I instinctively reached for the person beside me, only to find the bed empty. Where had Ethan gone in the middle of the night? For some reason, panic rose in my chest. At that moment, I faintly heard voices outside, and because I was worried a burglar had broken in, I rushed to the door without even putting on shoes and opened a crack. The moment I saw the scene in the living room, I could not describe how I felt. I only felt that the summer air conditioning and the floor under my bare feet were like falling into an ice cellar. Claire sat on the sofa with messy hair and red eyes, as if she had been crying for a long time. Ethan stood in front of her, his expression terrifyingly cold. "Are you done?" he said in a very low voice. "If you're done, go home." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I regret it. So can't you give me one chance?" Ethan coldly pulled his sleeve back and was using Claire's phone to call someone. "Hurry up and come get your fiancée, and don't let her come to someone else's front door drunk in the middle of the night." Not long after, hurried footsteps came. I opened the door crack a little wider and realized I actually knew this man. It was Sebastian Ford, who also lived in this villa district. He was the only son of the biggest tourist resort developer in New York, and his family background was even more prominent than the Carters. Looking at his anxious, red-rimmed eyes, I could not help sighing inwardly. How much good karma had Claire built up in her past life? She had been a little poor in her teens, but in college, Ethan paved the way for her and nearly lived and died for her. Now, after going abroad and polishing her resume a little, she directly made this heir of the Ford family worry over her. People really were different from one another, and I did not go out to create a famous old love new love disaster scene before quietly closing the door. But then a message from my best friend suddenly popped up on my phone. "That bitch Claire got drunk at a bar tonight and cried into the camera while confessing her love to Ethan, and the video has already been posted online. I've never seen such a disgusting woman, and now that she's almost 30 and her career isn't going well, she probably regretted everything after seeing you and Ethan being happy together." I cut off her outrage and sent her the living room scene I had just filmed. Claire seems to have a boyfriend, and it's Sebastian Ford. Holy shit, does that bitch have some kind of poison on her that lowers men's IQ? Is Sebastian Ford blind or what? After hearing the sounds outside gradually disappear, I quietly returned to bed. However, early the next morning, I was woken by the sound of arguing outside. I opened the door half asleep and saw Ethan's parents sitting on the sofa with ashen faces. They must have seen today's trending topic. Get Claire Summers out of New York right now. Ethan's father said sternly. What the hell was that video of her crying in a bar last night? The shareholders are all asking about this. She was the one who abandoned you and went abroad back then, Ethan. So don't be foolish. And now she's actually using such low tactics to ruin your marriage with Lily. If you don't clean this up properly, don't blame Carter Group's official channels for blacklisting her. After dropping those words, Ethan's father left. Ethan clenched his fists and turned around with red eyes, only to suddenly see me. Honey. A trace of panic flashed through his eyes. The trending topic has nothing to do with me, and Claire is already engaged to Sebastian Ford, so I don't know why she keeps pestering me like this. I'll handle this properly. Ethan had already been gradually taking over Carter Group, and after this incident, he seemed to have truly gone head-to-head with the Ford family. He personally dragged me into several couple endorsements for the company, improved the corporate image, and secretly stole the Ford family's business to pressure Sebastian into sending Claire away. Until 1 month later. That day, a group of us had just finished gathering at a private club, and when Ethan and I opened the door of the private room, Claire suddenly stumbled out from the end of the hallway. She wore a white dress, her clothes were disheveled, and there were scratches and blood marks on her face. Ethan, save me. Please save me. This scene felt so familiar. It made me feel as if I had returned to 5 years ago, and I had to admit that Claire in college was like a wild crabapple blooming in barren soil, stubborn and proud. That was why Ethan had fallen for her. She gritted her teeth and used all her strength to grab Ethan's sleeve, but after seeing me, her entire body stiffened before she hurriedly lowered her head, let go, and stepped back. Miss Bennett, I didn't mean to, and I'll leave New York right away, and never again. A tear fell from the corner of her eye, and she clenched her fists and closed her eyes. I'll never appear in front of Ethan again. Then she turned and limped toward the door. Looking at her back, as if she were the only person left alone in the world, I was stunned. Mainly, I never expected that Claire would one day become scheming enough to stage a scene like this and frame me. Her acting was so convincing that it was as if I had really sent people to teach her a lesson and warn her to stay away from my husband. On the surface, she was asking Ethan for help, but in reality, she was shaping me into a sinister, vicious woman. But she was now Sebastian Ford's fiancée, and the Bennett family could not afford to offend the Ford family at all. I forced out a mocking smile and turned to observe Ethan's reaction. His face was expressionless, making it impossible for me to see what he was thinking. I heard Carter Group blacklisted her, and her company is about to go bankrupt, so she's been begging people everywhere lately. Ethan took my hand and smiled coldly. What does that have to do with me? After we got in the car, I tested him again. Then Ethan, about what just happened, do you also think I did it? But he held me in his arms. I believe it wasn't you. I nodded. After all, the Ford family was someone neither Carter Group nor Bennett Group could afford to offend, and I was not that stupid. And Ethan had witnessed me barely making it step by step from the edge of bankruptcy to where I was today, so he should understand better than I did how much I cherished the present. However, the next day, $400 million was suddenly transferred out of my account. Bennett Group was about to go public, and that $400 million almost determined whether Bennett Group lived or died. I called Ethan, but no one answered, so in my panic, I drove straight to his company to find him. When I pushed open the office door, I saw Claire sitting there with tears streaming down her face, and the wounds on her face had just been bandaged. Ethan sat beside her and lifted his head to meet my gaze. $400 million was suddenly transferred out of my account, and was it you? Although I already had a guess in my heart, I wanted to hear Ethan admit it himself. I took it. Why? Coldness seeped through Ethan's eyes. Claire's company owed $400 million, so I helped her pay it back. Even Claire raised her head in shock, pulled out her phone, and immediately checked her company's repayment records. The assistants beside them exchanged looks. I looked at Ethan in confusion, but I saw him tighten his grip on Claire's hand beside him and protect her behind him like a guardian. Lily Bennett, this is what you owe her. After saying that, he threw a stack of documents hard onto the coffee table and photos scattered across the floor with a rustle. The first photo showed Claire at the club, being pinned to the floor with someone's foot on her face, her white dress covered in filthy cigarette ash, her clothes disheveled, and her eyes unfocused. The second photo showed her being yanked by her long hair, her chin forced open, as if she was being fed some kind of drug. The third photo showed extreme terror all over her face, and her neckline had been roughly torn open, exposing her collarbone and the edge of her underwear. Among the open documents were 2 fingerprinted confessions, where 2 thugs admitted in black and white that they had been instructed by me to teach Claire Summers a little lesson. He actually believed such a cheap frame-up. I stood in the center of the office, the air conditioning blowing a cold, mechanical draft over my bare ankles. On the floor, the scattered photos looked like fallen, dirty leaves. Claire was still weeping, her shoulders trembling in a way that seemed almost rehearsed, while Ethan kept his arm wrapped protectively around her, staring at me as if I were a monster he had accidentally let into his bed. "Is that all?" I asked. My voice was surprisingly calm. There were no tears, no dramatic gasps. Just a hollow, echoing quiet in my chest. "Is that all?" Ethan's voice cracked, sharp with a mixture of disbelief and deep, simmering rage. "Lily, look at these photos. Look at what your people did to her. She was dragged into an alley, beaten, and forced to swallow drugs. If my assistant hadn't found her in time, she might have been dead by now. And you ask me if that's all?" "I didn't do it," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. "And you know me. You've known me since we were children, Ethan. Do you really believe I have the capacity, let alone the resources, to hire thugs to torture someone?" "People change when they get greedy, Lily," Ethan sneered, his grip on Claire tightening. "You were desperate to keep your place as Mrs. Carter. You knew Claire's return threatened you, so you resorted to this. I used to think you were gentle, that you were the one who saved me from the edge. But now I see you've just been putting on an act. You're cold, calculating, and vicious." Beside him, Claire peeked through her fingers, her tear-stained face a mask of fragile innocence. "Ethan, don't argue with Ms. Bennett because of me. It's my fault. I shouldn't have come back. If I had just stayed abroad, none of this would have happened." "Don't speak, Claire. You don't have to apologize to her," Ethan said, his voice softening instantly as he looked down at her. Then, he looked back at me, his eyes freezing over. "The $400 million was transferred to Claire's company account as compensation. Consider it your bail money, Lily. If you dare to touch her again, I won't just take your money. I'll make sure the Bennett family vanishes from New York entirely." I looked at the husband I had loved for 5 years. To help him get over Claire, I had abandoned my own personality. I had worn the white dresses she liked, spoken in the soft, hesitant tones she used, and styled my hair in the exact same parted waves. I had played the perfect, compliant shadow. But the moment the real Claire cried out in pain, the illusion shattered. He didn't care about the truth. He only cared about playing the white knight for his tragic first love. And, to do that, he had stolen $400 million from my company. That money was Bennett Group's lifeblood. We were in the final stages of our IPO audit. A sudden, unauthorized deficit of $400 million would not only halt the listing but trigger a massive investigation by the Regulatory Commission, potentially bankrupting US overnight. Ethan had bypassed my secondary security protocol by using my personal physical keycard, which I kept in our home safe. Because our companies were deep in joint venture negotiations, he had temporary executive authorization over certain joint escrow accounts. He had abused that trust to destroy me. "Ethan," I said softly, my voice devoid of any warmth, "you will regret this." He let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "Regret? The only thing I regret is marrying a viper like you." I didn't say another word. I turned on my heel and walked out of the office, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Behind me, the door clicked shut, sealing them in their little world of mutual delusion. As soon as I stepped into the elevator, I pulled out my phone and called my personal assistant, Secretary Wong. "Miss Bennett," her anxious voice came through. "We've been trying to reach you. The finance department just flagged a massive unauthorized withdrawal. $400 million was moved from our core IPO escrow account to an offshore shell entity linked to Summers International. What's going on? The auditors are arriving tomorrow morning." "I know," I said, my voice steady and cold as steel. "Listen to me carefully, Secretary Wong. Lock down all financial databases immediately. Do not let anyone from the Carter Group access our shared servers. Terminate all joint venture negotiations with Carter Group effective immediately." But the IPO. "The IPO will proceed," I interrupted. "But first, we're going to cut out the cancer. Call our legal team. Tell them to draft a formal criminal complaint for corporate embezzlement, trade secret theft, and unauthorized financial manipulation. The target is Ethan Carter." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Miss Bennett, are you sure? He's your husband." "Not for much longer," I said. "And call Detective Lin. I need a private forensic investigation into the incident at the club yesterday. I want the complete, unedited security footage, GPS logs, and the backgrounds of those 2 thugs. Do it quietly." "Understood, Miss Bennett. I'm on it." I hung up the phone and stepped out of the building. The afternoon sun was blinding, but I felt a strange, liberating warmth wash over me. For 5 years, I had lived in a cage of my own making, trying to be a replica of Claire Summers. Today, that replica died. I drove straight to a high-end salon in downtown Manhattan. "Cut it," I told the stylist, pointing to my waist-length, curled hair. The hair Ethan had loved to stroke while whispering Claire's name in his sleep. Short. A sharp, asymmetrical bob. The stylist looked hesitant. "Are you sure, ma'am? Your hair is beautiful." "I'm sure," I said. An hour later, I looked in the mirror. The fragile, melancholic woman was gone. In her place was a sharp, striking woman with cold, intelligent eyes and a jawline that looked like it could cut glass. Next, I went to a luxury boutique. I bought a structured, charcoal gray power suit, a crisp silk shirt, and a pair of dark sunglasses. I went back to the villa I shared with Ethan, packed all of my white dresses, soft cardigans, and delicate jewelry into a giant metal trash can in the courtyard and poured lighter fluid over them. As the flames devoured the remnants of my 5-year humiliation, I stood by, watching the black smoke rise into the blue sky. I was no longer the substitute. I was Lily Bennett, the sole heiress of the Bennett Group. And I was about to take back everything that belonged to me. Over the next 3 days, I didn't return to the villa. I lived in my office, surviving on black coffee and adrenaline. Our legal team worked around the clock, compiling the paper trail of the $400 million transfer. Ethan had been clever, using a temporary corporate authorization clause to execute the transfer. But he had made one fatal mistake. He had signed the authorization using my forged digital signature, thinking I would cover for him out of love or fear of public scandal. He underestimated how quickly a woman's love can turn to ash. On the 4th morning, Detective Lin entered my office, tossing a thick manila folder onto my desk. "You were right, Lily," he said, pulling up a chair. "The whole thing was a setup, but it's much dirtier than you think." I opened the folder. Inside were several high-resolution surveillance screenshots from the private club's rear exit, along with financial records. "The 2 thugs who confessed to being hired by you are actually former security personnel employed by the Ford family," Detective Lin explained. "Specifically, they report directly to Sebastian Ford's personal assistant." My brows furrowed. Sebastian Ford? Why would his men beat up his own fiancée? That's the beauty of it. They didn't just beat her up. They were disciplining her, Lynn said, pointing to a set of bank statements. Claire Summers didn't just start a company abroad. She ran a high-society Ponzi scheme in Europe, targeting wealthy socialites. When her scheme collapsed, she fled back to New York, owing over $300 million to various creditors, including several offshore subsidiaries owned by the Ford family. I leaned back in my chair, a cold smile spreading across my lips. So Sebastian Ford didn't propose to her out of love. He held her debt. Exactly, Lynn nodded. Sebastian found out that Claire was secretly trying to hook up with Ethan to get him to pay off her debts. Sebastian is a notorious control freak with a violent streak. When he caught her contacting Ethan, he had his men teach her a lesson at the club. Claire, terrified of Sebastian but desperate for money, realized she could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. She played the victim, blamed you for the beating, and used Ethan's guilt to extort the $400 million she needed to buy her freedom from Sebastian. And Ethan, blind as a bat, fell for it hook, line, and sinker, I murmured. What about the thugs' written confessions? Why did they say I hired them? Because Claire paid them off using a portion of the money she expected to get from Ethan, Lynn replied, sliding a recording device across the desk. We tracked down one of the thugs. He folded after we threatened him with 20 years for conspiracy and assault. He admitted that Claire paid them to sign those pre-written confessions. I have his recorded statement right here. I pressed play. The thug's voice was trembling, clearly terrified of the legal consequences. He detailed how Claire had approached them after the beating, offering them $50,000 each to sign the confessions naming me as the instigator. Perfect, I said, turning off the recording. What about Sebastian Ford? Does he know his fiancée just paid off her debt to him using embezzled funds from the Bennett Group? Lynn smirked. Sebastian doesn't care where the money came from, as long as he got paid. But I doubt he'll be happy to know that Claire has been playing him for a fool, using another man's money to pay him off, while publicly declaring her undying love for Ethan. Let's make sure he finds out, I said, my eyes flashing with anticipation. Have you leaked the club's unedited surveillance footage to the media yet? Not yet. I was waiting for your command. Hold it for now, I said, looking at the calendar. In 2 days, Carter Group is hosting their annual charity gala. It's their biggest PR event of the year, and all of New York's elite, including Sebastian Ford and the Carter family shareholders, will be there. We'll give them a show they'll never forget. The night of the Carter Group charity gala arrived. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was bathed in golden light. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the high ceilings, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, champagne, and whispered gossip. Ethan stood near the entrance, looking dashing in a tailored tuxedo. Beside him stood his parents, smiling warmly at the guests. But there was a noticeable tension in their eyes. The rumors of a rift between the Carters and the Bennetts had already begun to circulate, and our sudden withdrawal from the joint venture negotiations had sent shockwaves through the market. Suddenly, the heavy double doors of the ballroom opened, and a hush fell over the crowd. I stepped into the room. I was wearing a stunning, backless crimson gown that clung to my curves like a second skin. My short, sharp bob framed my face perfectly, and my makeup was bold, with dark red lipstick that contrasted sharply with my pale skin. I looked powerful, radiant, and completely unrecognizable from the timid, white dress-wearing wife they all knew. Ethan froze when he saw me. His eyes widened, a mixture of shock, confusion, and a sudden, inexplicable surge of desire flashing through his gaze. He had never seen me look like this. I looked like a queen, not a shadow. "Lily?" he murmured, stepping forward, his voice tight. "What did you do to your hair? And what are you wearing? Do you like it?" I asked, offering him a cold, polite smile. I decided it was time to stop wearing trash. His face darkened instantly. "This is a formal family event, Lily. Don't cause a scene. We still need to maintain appearances for the media until the divorce papers are finalized." "Divorce papers?" I chuckled softly. "Oh, Ethan, we're not just getting a divorce. We're going to have a very public reckoning." Before he could respond, a soft, delicate voice interrupted us. "Ethan, Ms. Bennett." Claire walked up, wearing a pristine, floor-length white gown that looked suspiciously like a wedding dress. Her makeup was light and dewy, clearly designed to hide the fading bruises on her face. She looked like a fragile angel, the perfect contrast to my fierce crimson. "Ms. Bennett, I'm glad you came," Claire said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I hoped we could use tonight to put the past behind us. Ethan has already helped me resolve my company's issues, and I bear no ill towards you for what happened." She was trying to show off. She wanted everyone to know that Ethan had chosen her, that he had used my company's money to save her. "Is that so, Miss Summers?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "You bear no ill will? How incredibly generous of you, considering you're the one who staged a beating, forged confessions, and extorted $400 million from my company." Several nearby guests gasped, their eyes darting between us. Ethan stepped in front of Claire, his expression furious. "Lily, shut your mouth. I told you, I have the confessions. Do not try to deny what you did in public." "I don't need to deny anything, Ethan," I said, calmly taking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter's tray. "Because the truth has a funny way of making itself known." Right at that moment, the lights in the ballroom suddenly dimmed. The giant projector screen at the front of the stage, which was supposed to show a video of Carter Group's charitable contributions, flickered and turned static. "What's going on?" Ethan's father, the patriarch of the Carter family, demanded, looking frantically at the tech booth. "Fix the screen." But it was too late. The screen cleared, and a high-definition video began to play. It was the surveillance footage from the rear alley of the private club. The video showed Claire standing in the alley, talking to two men. There was no struggle, no violence. Instead, one of the men, identified clearly by a floating text graphic as Sebastian Ford's personal bodyguard, handed her a small vial. Claire took it, poured some of the liquid onto her own clothes, and then began to deliberately scratch her own face and tear her dress. The ballroom fell into a suffocating, dead silence. Everyone's eyes were glued to the screen. The video transitioned to an audio recording. It was the thug's confession, loud and clear over the ballroom's state-of-the-art sound system. "Claire Summers offered us $50,000 each to sign the papers saying Lily Bennett hired us. She said she needed to make Ethan Carter believe she was in danger, so he would give her the money to pay off her debts to Mr. Ford. We didn't beat her up. Her bruises were from Mr. Ford because she stole from him." The audio cut to another recording. This one was a phone call between Claire and her offshore financial manager. "The $400 million from the Bennett Group has cleared. Transfer it immediately to Sebastian Ford's trust account. Once he receives it, my debt is cleared, and he will release my passport. Ethan is a fool. He actually stole it from his wife's company for me. No. Turn it off. Turn it off." Claire screamed, her face turning pale as a sheet. She lunged towards the stage, but she tripped over her own white gown and collapsed onto the floor, looking utterly pathetic. Ethan stood frozen, his eyes wide, staring at the screen as his entire world crumbled around him. The blood drained from his face, leaving him looking like a corpse. This isn't real," Ethan muttered, his voice trembling violently as he looked at Claire, then back to the screen, and finally at me. "Lily, this is a deepfake, right? You made this up to ruin us." "I don't have the time or the interest to make deepfakes, Ethan," I said, taking a slow sip of my champagne. "But if you don't believe the video, maybe you'll believe the man who helped me obtain it." From the crowd, a tall, imposing figure stepped forward. Sebastian Ford, dressed in a flawless black tuxedo, walked up to the stage. His expression was cold and completely detached. He didn't even look at Claire, who was sobbing at his feet, clutching his trousers. "Sebastian, please, Sebastian, tell them it's a lie." Claire cried out, her voice cracking with terror. "Tell them we're engaged. Tell them you love me." Sebastian coldly kicked his leg back, dislodging her grip as if she were a piece of dirt on his shoe. "Engaged?" Sebastian sneered, his voice echoing through the silent ballroom. "Claire Summers, you were never my fiancée. You were nothing but a thief who used my family's name to run a fraudulent Ponzi scheme in Europe. The only reason I didn't send you to prison was because you promised to pay back every cent. I had no idea you planned to do so by conspiring with Ethan Carter to embezzle funds from the Bennett Group. Sebastian turned to look at the crowd, his gaze landing on Ethan's father. Mr. Carter, your son has used embezzled funds from a joint escrow account to pay off a criminal's debt to my family. The Ford Group will have no part in this. The $400 million has already been frozen by the federal authorities, and we are cooperating fully with the investigation. Ethan's father gasped, clutching his chest as he stumbled backward. Embezzlement? Frozen? Ethan, what did you do? Father, I thought. Ethan stammered, his voice choked with panic. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, pleading terror. Lily, please, we're husband and wife. We can talk about this. I did it for. I thought she was in danger. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't care to know, I said, walking up to him. I reached into my clutch bag and pulled out a thick envelope, tossing it onto his chest. It fell to the floor, spilling its contents. Here are your divorce papers. I've already signed them. I am taking back my share of the Bennett Carter joint assets, which amounts to 60% of your current holdings. Lily, no. You can't do this to me. You love me. Ethan cried out, reaching for my hand, but I stepped back, avoiding his touch as if he were toxic waste. I loved the man I thought saved me, I said coldly. But that man was a shadow, and I am done living in the dark. At that moment, the grand doors of the ballroom opened once more. A group of uniformed police officers and federal investigators stepped into the room, led by Detective Lynn. They walked straight past the whispering crowd, heading directly towards Ethan. Ethan Carter? Detective Lynn asked, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. You are under arrest for corporate embezzlement, financial fraud, and unauthorized access to protected financial systems. You have the right to remain silent. No. Wait. You can't arrest me. I'm the heir of the Carter Group. Ethan screamed as the officers grabbed his arms and forced them behind his back. The metal handcuffs clicked shut with a cold, final sound. He looked back at me, tears streaming down his face, his voice cracking with desperation. Lily, please. Tell them it's a mistake. I love you. I've always loved you. It was only ever you. Take him away, I said to the officers, not sparing him another glance. As Ethan was dragged out of the ballroom, screaming and crying, the crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. Claire was left sitting on the floor, surrounded by security guards who were waiting to hand her over to the police as an accomplice. I turned to the shell-shocked guests, raising my glass of champagne. Thank you all for coming to the Carter Group Charity Gala, I said, my voice echoing beautifully through the room. But as of tonight, Bennett Group has officially severed all ties with the Carters. And tomorrow morning, Bennett Group will be going public on our own strength. Enjoy your evening. I drained my glass, set it down on a nearby table, and walked out of the ballroom. The night air was cool and fresh. As I stepped into my limousine, I looked up at the New York skyline. The lights were bright, endless, and full of promise. For 5 years, I had been a shadow. But tonight, the shadow had finally stepped into the light, and the world was mine to conquer.